Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and welcome to Secrets to Recovery Live. As you guys may have noted, we had a few technical challenges last time. We're pretty confident this time that we're going to knock it out of the park, as they would say in America. I don't know why I said that, but anyway. I've got two guests this evening. The first is Natasha Todd, who is going to be sharing her recovery story. And I know that recovery stories have always been very popular in Secrets to Recovery because I think when you hear from people that have been on the path that you're on, it gives you a very different perspective than just hearing from us guys as practitioners talking. And then we've got Ian Hatton, who is one of the trustees of the Optimum Health Clinic Foundation, who we're going to have a little bit of a chat about some of the research and the long-term kind of vision, let's say, that we have for the Optimum Health Clinic. So, Natasha, firstly, thank you for joining us on Secrets to Recovery. I think maybe a good starting point, the place often we start in these recovery stories, is where did the whole thing start for you? Back in 2008, I know you were a mum of 3 boys and I guess going around your life. And what was the point where you kind of felt like something was wrong, like you started to notice some symptoms?
I think I started to notice some symptoms but ignored them to start with. So,
okay. That's a fairly common pattern, yeah.
My husband had lost his job and I was offered a job in a US law firm in London, and it was supposed to be a part-time job, 9 to 5, 2 days a week. So I went back and did that, and of course over time it became a far bigger job than what they'd promised me, and I constantly had that feeling that I had to do about 100 hours in 20.
And you're working as a solicitor?
As a solicitor, yeah. Yes. And I think I was their guinea pig for part-time work, and I don't think there were any other people in that firm who had children, and there were only a few who were married. So it was very much a sort of single person's life, and they worked 24 hours a day. So it was
like, we've got a full-time job, but we don't want to pay someone full-time, so we'll get someone part-time to do it.
It was a bit like that. And I started feeling ill and very stressed about it, but I thought I had no choice because everybody else was working harder than me. So I had this real fear of failure. How come I can't do it if they're doing it, sort of thing. So I just kept going. And just sort of took it day by day. And I kept saying, if I get through next week, then it'll get better. If I get through next week, then it will get better. And then one day, on a day I wasn't working, I took the children to a park and I realised I couldn't even walk back to my car.
Wow. It's a funny kind of thing where, and I think this is probably common for lots of people that are kind of watching this, that your body gives you signs, but you just go, well, everyone gets tired, I've just got to keep, and especially if there's a kind of achiever pattern of some sort that's playing out, that we just ignore till we reach the point that you have no choice but to listen.
Yes, and I think that you never believe or know that that's going to be the result. You just think it's a matter of mind over matter, and I can just do it for another week. And it's that feeling that you have no choice, that you can't let people down, that you can't fail, that that you really just have no choice but to keep going. And I probably should have resigned, but I couldn't.
Yeah, and I guess, knowing what you know now, if you found yourself in a situation like that, I imagine you would just say, guys, this is unreasonable, I can't work to this. And you would have either negotiated something different or you would have left. But I guess at that time, you didn't have that kind of awareness. So you just had to keep going.
Yeah.
So you're out in the park with the kids and you realised you didn't have the energy to get back to the car. Well, what happened from there?
I phoned my mother. I was lucky enough to have family nearby. And I managed to get home and I just phoned her and said, can you take the boys away this evening? I don't think she quite understood what I was asking. And I said, no, just take them home with you. I can't do anything. I can't do any more. I still thought I was going to get up the next day and go to work.
Right, okay.
And my husband had to say to me, hang on a minute, you can't look after your children and you're going to work tomorrow. But there was a deadline and I didn't think I had a choice. Actually, I didn't go the next day. I couldn't. I couldn't get up. And once I'd stopped and I couldn't get up, then there was a huge sense of relief because something had given me an excuse not to be there.
Yeah. So what happened from that point? Was it a kind of fairly consistent, or did you then get better for a while? So,
I think I felt rotten for about a week, but gradually I got the children back and I kept going for a bit. And then I had a bit of a scare a week later because I felt like I couldn't breathe. It was really painful breathing, and I called my neighbour and we went to the GP, and she said, you've got a virus on your chest and it will be 6 weeks. So at that point I knew, right, that 6 weeks I won't be going back to work. I'm going to feel rotten for 6 weeks. And so I don't think I completely gave into it. I was still at home managing what I had to manage, but sort of taking them to school and then crawling into bed and then crawling out of bed to go and get them. And that was sustainable for a period. And then I realised that I couldn't even do that.
So in that 6 weeks, you didn't start improving, if anything?
No, it got worse. Yeah. And at that point, we actually moved to my parents' house.
Wow. Because
I couldn't, the children were 4, 6 and 8. And I just...
pretty full on.
I just couldn't function. Yeah. So I was lucky enough to have family there, and when I got there, I then gave into it. I didn't try and do anything. I stayed in bed.
And was that difficult to do? I mean, I understand that on one hand, physically, you had no choice but to do that. But was it a relief? Was it partly a kind of fighting against that? Like, how was that?
I think by then, I felt so ill that it was a relief because my responsibility had been taken out of my hands. Yes. And at least somebody else was getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning and getting the children to school. I just couldn't do that. I wasn't sleeping at night and I wasn't able to wake up in the morning. And I could hardly walk downstairs. So actually, at that stage, it was a relief because... and in fact, I remember thinking, I'd rather feel like this than go to work. That's how awful
it had been
my memory of that job was.
Yeah.
I found a way out. Yeah. So at first it was just, gosh, how lovely, I'm lying in bed reading a book. And
even though you felt ill.
Yeah, I don't need to be anywhere else. And I never believed it would be more than a few weeks. I thought I had this virus. So I didn't at that stage know what it was. But there was this sense of, I've got out of the job and someone's looking after me and my children, and I'm okay. That's okay for now.
Okay. Well, what happened from there? Because obviously, I'm aware that it didn't get better.
Yes. Well, I think after about probably 8 weeks, I realised that it probably wasn't just a virus. So I'm sure, like everyone else, I went back to the GP, and the GP sent me to a diagnostic consultant, and I went through all sorts of tests. In fact, he wanted to take me into hospital for a night and put monitors on me and everything. At that point, I said, stop. I think probably I've just got chronic fatigue, and you really don't need to test, ad infinitum.
Yes.
So he then put me on an old-fashioned antidepressant and on a very low dose and said, this will, over time, as we increase the dose, bring back your energy. Your body sort of got used to being like this, and it will get to a point where you will just click out of it.
So he thought it was just a deconditioning, kind of depressive kind of thing that was going on.
I've no idea really how he understood what chronic fatigue was.
Okay. Or didn't understand what chronic fatigue was. Sure.
But he was absolutely adamant that this was going to work.
Yeah.
And that was quite a positive thing, because there I was with no energy whatsoever. It was very physical for me, so it wasn't so much the brain fog, although I had crashing headaches. I had really, really bad headaches, but I could still concentrate on things. But it was very, very physical. It was sort of my day just to get down to breakfast and back up, and then sort of have a bath, and then then it was lunchtime sort of thing. So he was promising me more energy, and at first when I started taking this, it helped my sleep. So I was starting to get a better sort of balance of
getting
help a little
sleep.
Bit.
So it's getting sleep at that point.
So
really important.
So that really helped me, but I felt pretty drugged by it most of the time. I wasn't really with it for probably the first few weeks. And then I got used to it, and we kept upping the dose, and we got to a certain dose, and I just wasn't. At first I was seeing a slight change in energy levels, So, and I was, this is really, this moment's going to come. And then it was obvious that the moment wasn't going to come, and it had helped me as much as it could. And at that point, I was very uncomfortable with being on a drug. So I then said to him, I'm not going up any further. I'm going to start coming down.
And that was about a year into?
I think I was on it for about 6 months, probably.
Okay.
And at that point, I was seeing a nutritionist throughout this. I'd done quite a lot of nutrition. It was just an interest of mine beforehand, and I'd done a home study course, and I had seen somebody locally, and she put me in touch with one of the nutritionists here, and that's how.
I didn't know. I wondered how the connection.
Yeah,
happened.
so it was a friend of hers, and when she suspected that it was a chronic fatigue, that's how I got put in touch with the clinic.
Okay. So I think by that point you were about a year into the kind of, you were saying before we started filming that about a year into having symptoms, but of course, as you say, it went back kind of prior to that.
Yeah.
So you came and did, I think, the 90 Day program, and it continues the nutrition work that you were doing.
Yes. Yeah.
What was that like? I guess especially I'm always curious when there's a kind of psychological component introduced, although of course I won't go to the hospital now about that we recognise a very real physical illness, but there was a psychological component that was introduced.
Yeah.
How was that? Was that something you were open to, resistant to?
Well, it was very interesting because I don't think I knew what I was turning up to when I came to the 90 Day program. Okay. In the sense that it was a great experience for me, but it was a massive shock at the same time, because I was a lawyer and I had literally gone through my life thinking I can analyse everything and find solutions, and if you think hard enough about it and you work it out, anything can be solved, obviously except my illness. That wasn't working, and so psychology and the mind-body connection had never ever come into my life at all. So everything that I learnt here was sort of extraordinary. It just opened up a world I knew nothing about, and I don't think I was resistant to the fact that there might be some psychology involved, because I think when it's explained it makes sense. But it was just opening up something I had literally no understanding of at all. So that's quite, that sort of puts you a bit off balance to start with.
I understand, and so you came up and you were in a group with, I guess, half a dozen other people, and you kind of taught these various techniques and tools and that kind of thing. What was that like when you got back home?
Well, I think a lot of people will find this familiar, but I sort of went and that pushing yourself and achieving and doing it perfectly came in to start with. So there were the stops, and it was sort of like, how do I do my stops? What if I don't do them right? What if I don't do them perfectly? How often do I need to do them? What if I'm not doing them enough? All that stuff came in.
It's so funny that what so often happens is, and I know that you know this, but people watching that the characteristics which were significant in causing us to get ill are often the characteristics we then try to get out of the situation we're in. And it's just kind of fascinating that people push themselves ill, discover they're ill, and go, right, well, obviously I have to push myself out of this. And they just apply the same strategy again, because it's all they know to do at that point.
So I think, to start with, it was a bit scary in a way, just thinking, what if I can't do this? What if everyone else can do the stop process apart from me? And so I went through a bit of that. But I think over time, and with the support and with the group and everything, you sort of muddle through, and you don't sort of always get it right. But I started recognising a little bit more about what I was doing or what I wasn't doing. And I just decided in the end that I couldn't do a stop when something came up, because I was, it didn't work, or I didn't commit to it, or I started worrying about it. So I made a time every day when I did my stops. And whether there was something to do it on or not,
Sure.
but just the process of saying, this is when I'm going to do it, and making it a daily thing. And there was always something, you know, when you stop to actually, you know, say, right, what's going on, there was always something I could do it on. And I think that was a turning point for me.
Yeah, and just to give some context for people that are watching, that the stop process is basically a technique that we teach people to turn off the maladaptive stress response. So often what happens is the whole nervous system gets overstimulated, and it's a way of recognizing how that happens and stopping those patterns and settling things. And it's one element of what we do in the 90-day program, but often it can be quite an important element. So as you were applying that, what was the effect? Did you see differences straight away? Was it something that took some time? Was it kind of a straight line? Were there bumps in it? Often it's not a straight line. That's why I think it's good people would understand that.
Yes. No, it certainly wasn't a straight line. And I think I was doing other things as well. I was having one-to-one sessions at the clinic. So I think that was helping as well, because a lot of the patterns were very ensconced, the sort of perfectionist and the inner critic and that sort of thing. But I think what the stops really helped with was the awareness of what was going on. And I think that doesn't come in the first week after the 90-day program or the first month. It sort of gradually just sort of happens.
Sure.
And I think that was something that I learnt over time, is that you don't need to push it, and you don't need to worry about, have I done enough stops today, or have I done enough, you know, meditation or this to get well. It's more about just living with a consciousness and an awareness, because if you have that, then in a sense the changes are sort of bubbling away without you having to try too hard. Yeah,
well, one of the things that you know, you were saying in our preparation is that cultivating patience with that had been really important. I don't know if you can say anything about what helped, because I think what can often happen is we want to see change and we're not seeing change, and then that triggers a whole load of patterns. Can you say anything about what helped you with that patience, especially when you'd been used to kind of looking for things to happen quickly?
I think that I realised at some point, and this wasn't quick, I think, you know, the first year was probably just about, you know, grappling with everyday life and going through the ups and downs and just trying to stay on vaguely on a path that you know. But I think over time I realised that I didn't want to go back to the life that I'd had before, and that life was actually totally unsustainable and miserable.
And was it difficult seeing that? Was it a relief to see that? Or?
I think I knew it. I probably even knew it, but didn't want to acknowledge it before I got ill.
Yes.
But so in a way, it was a relief to recognise that, and to recognise that life doesn't have to be like that. That I had some tools and some awareness to realise why it was like that and how it could be different. And a lot of that for me was around this trying to get everything right and sort of pushing myself, and that whole sort of perfectionist pattern, and the judgment as well, the sort of inner critic there. And those patterns are quite difficult patterns to change. And they don't happen by doing 100 stops a day for 90 days. They have to happen in their own time.
That is the achiever pattern doing that. Yeah.
It's a sort of, it has to happen by a bit of commitment and a bit of sort of osmosis of a new way. And I realised it couldn't be hurried. So I would sort of go forward a bit and then plateau for a bit, and then, you know, and maybe go backwards or whatever I was doing. But I actually realised that I wanted to get to a different place from where I'd started, and that to get there, it couldn't happen quickly. And I think then that helped me to be patient about how long it was going to take. So that sort of idea of pushing it or expecting something to happen quickly, that sort of dissolved away, and that really helped.
Well, I often think that patience is something you have to cultivate. It's not something that you just have. It's something that you have to actively work to develop that as a capacity. Can you also say something about the role that belief played for you? You know, in a sense, again, I remember you said earlier about believing you can get well and believing that the path you're in. I just want to say as a preamble to it that I had this thing around belief that it's not that you just believe something's going to happen, it happens, because of course we could say, when your doctor said, take the amitriptyline, for the next number of time, you believed that was going to be it, and you also believed initially that you're just going to be a couple 6 weeks with a lung thing going on. So it's not just blindly believing, but also we have to have belief to take action and to follow through with that. So you can speak to that a little bit.
I think I was lucky that the whole way through, even on the amitriptyline, I could see a trend that was going in the right direction, albeit very slow, and albeit that I had blips that went the wrong way. But generally, I was moving very slowly in the right direction. So that gave me hope to start with. And I think that helped me believe that I was going to get well. I don't think you don't always see the path you're going to have to take. I think it didn't occur to me that this was it for my life.
Sure.
I stubbornness or whatever, I don't know what it is, but I just believed that if there's a way of doing it, I will get there. And there were days when I didn't particularly believe that, but overall... Yeah,
and sorry, I think that's also an important point to make, that believing that we can get well and change things doesn't equate to believing that in every moment.
No.
And often what happens is there are on the bad days, the days we kind of most need to believe it, are the ones we have no faith, and it's like, oh my God, it's always going to be like this. And then it's on the better days, sometimes we can go too far and go, oh my God, I feel so much better, I'm completely recovered, and then we go and crash, we've done too much too quickly. But there's a kind of having a solid belief, I think, is really important.
And there were days where, of course, I didn't believe it, and it's fine not to believe it for a day, but it's when it goes on and on. But I think the other thing that really helped was that when I came to the Optimum Health Clinic and I was doing the psychology and the nutrition, I stuck with that as a path, and it made sense to me. And the psychology was a very new thing to me, but I was fascinated in it. So I enjoyed it, if you like, finding out about it, seeing that, what could help, and just understanding how some life skills, really. No one had ever taught me that. And I was always interested in nutrition. So I really did believe that if I stuck to that path, I would get better. And I think I've come across so many people who, after 3 weeks, will say to me, oh, I'm not sure whether this is working. Have you tried this? And I think you can spend so much time and energy looking on the internet, trying different things, and you never settle something that you can waste so much energy doing that. Whereas if you've got to give things a chance. And again, it's about this patience. It's not going to happen quickly. So you've got to set your expectations and go with it. But if you've got that belief there, it really helps you on that journey.
It's interesting. One of the things we say to people at the start of the 90-day program is that for this 90 days, stop researching. And it's kind of ironic because, of course, a lot of people find the Optimum Health Clinic on the internet. So, of course, there's a value to that. But there is also a place that people, as you're speaking, people almost become obsessed with constantly researching and constantly trying to find new things. And the danger that it can just feed the anxiety about what's happening. And, I don't claim that we have all the answers. Sometimes, it's important to go. But it's doing that in a balanced, considered
And I think
way,
sometimes it's that idea that there might be a quick fix and we haven't found it.
Yeah.
And it's actually...
Very attractive idea,
realising that there may not be a quick fix, and actually the only person who can fix it is yourself. And I think sometimes people are running away from that reality that it is themselves that have to fix it.
Yeah, I always think that, we can give lots of advice and guidance and support, and other people can give advice, guidance, support, but the individual has to be the captain of their own ship of recovery, because it's their body. They're the one that's there every day, day in, day out with it. Can you also, let's just touch a little bit on empowerment as well, because I think it takes a lot of discipline, it takes a lot of determination and a lot of self-belief, in a sense, to follow through and be consistent and do what needs to be done. So what role did empowerment play for you in your path? Well,
I think that, again, it links into to what we've just been saying about you're the only person that can fix it. And I think in the beginning, for me, I spent quite a lot of time feeling sorry for myself. Just sort of thinking everyone around me should be nice to me because I'm in this awful situation and they're not.
Right.
And every time I wanted sympathy or just sort of gave up and felt sorry for myself, the reaction I got from other people was very, very negative.
That's interesting.
And it was really sort of, why should we look after you? Look at the extra things we're having to do because you're ill. If you're going to be grumpy, I don't mind doing it if you're not. But if you're going to be a dreadful patient, then we're not going to bother. Yeah. And I think it's that moment of realisation when you think, actually, I got myself into this. I'm responsible for getting myself out of this, and realising that it is up to you, and nobody else. People are not going to sit there and make you feel better by feeling sorry for you, and it really doesn't serve any purpose.
Yeah, I think it's such a difficult role being the carer of someone that's ill, and finding that balance between providing support, genuine support for someone, and not indulging where they are. And I think also for the patient it's so difficult because does someone with ME chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, or whatever their diagnosis, have a right to feel grumpy, pissed off, and fed up? Totally. So, it's a shit, for want of a better word, situation for someone to be in, and having that attitude towards it only further feeds the suffering that someone's in.
Yeah. I think that's right, and you think when you feel sorry for yourself that somehow it's going to give you something from other people, and it just didn't work. It was just, I felt worse, people didn't want to be with me, and that's the harsh reality, I think, when you're ill, is that nobody wants to be with somebody unless they're going to give something to them. So if you're not going to be cheerful, you won't have any friends left.
And grateful as well for the support.
Yeah, and I think it's just realising, actually, if you go in that direction, it can only get worse. And it's just that knowledge that actually I need to get off my arse and do something myself, and I can improve it.
But without doing that in the old achiever pushing way, which is often such a challenge.
Yeah.
Also, sense of purpose. You said to me earlier as well that there was you had a sense of purpose was important. But say a little bit about that. You were saying both in terms of being a mother and also the course.
Well, I think one of the difficult things when you've had this period of illness is this feeling that you've just wasted 4 years of your life, and all the things that you used to be able to do you can't do anymore. So whether it's work or being a good tennis player or whatever it is, everything stopped. And for me, I think it really helped to still have a role. And although being a mother at times when you're ill is quite stressful, because obviously you may not have the energy and you've still got these 3 children to look after, for me it really helped me because it gave me that sense of purpose. I was still being a mother. I still had a role. They came home every day and I was there, and I couldn't wallow or feel sorry for myself because they needed me. Yeah. And I think to be needed by children, especially because they're very accepting. They don't judge you for being ill. They don't judge you. You're just their mother. Yeah. And so for a few hours of a day, you're not labelled as an ill person by them. You're just doing your job as their mother. But
it's an interesting different reference point, because I often think being a parent with ME chronic fatigue, it has a particular set of challenges that go with it, and I think it can be very, very challenging. But I think it's a really helpful frame that you're putting around it, that yes, it has a different set of challenges, but also it has a gift that goes with it.
Yes,
and it's a helpful thing for people to recognise.
Yes, because I think a lot of things we feel when we're ill is this isolation because we can't be with our friends, we can't go out, we can't do these things, and you spend a lot of time on your own. And again, it really helps with that, because when they come in from school, you wouldn't be doing anything else even if you were well. That's what you would be doing. Yes. And so it stops you feeling different or isolated for some of your day, which I think is helpful. And the other thing I did was I did the training program here.
The practitioner course.
Yes. And I think, again, for me, it was physical things I couldn't do. But I was lucky enough to be able to concentrate. So I had that sense that I was learning something and that I could get through a course and sort of get something at the end of it and say, well, I've got something to show for that time. And I think that really helped as well.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So we've got a couple of minutes. So what's life like now? So we've kind of focused more on the things that helped you rather than the kind of detail of how it happened, which I think is a helpful way to come at it. But just say a little bit about life on the other side. Obviously, you got 3 kids, and kind of work is kind of been busy, and family life. When you look back on those, well, firstly, what's it like to have energy? Let's start there.
I appreciate it. I think, there are things that I keep doing things for a first time again, and you appreciate them a lot more because you haven't been able to do them. So whether it's get on a bike and go for a bike ride with my children, which I always had to stay behind before. I love the countryside and walking, and there were places I couldn't do the hills. So having that freedom to be able to walk again and to be able to go out, if I'm invited out to dinner, to actually be able to say yes and not worry about it.
Right.
Yes, it's lovely to have that freedom again to decide what you do and you don't want to do, rather than being sort of forced into living a certain way of life. And I think, having said all that, balance is a really key thing, because I think I approach my life differently now. So I'm not doing a lot of things I would have done in the past, but I'm very conscious of the balance that I want to keep to stay healthy.
So, and I think you've somewhat answered my last question, but if the you of 2007, let's say, before 2007, was watching this now, what would you? I mean, put that slightly differently. If the you of 2008, the you that had started to get ill, and that's probably a better way of coming to the question, what would you say to them in terms of from the knowledge and the wisdom you've got now? What would be the one thing that you would say? Just one thing.
Trust in yourself. Trust that you will get to where you need to. Yeah.
That's great. Natasha, thank you very much for your time. I know it's people that watch these stories really appreciate them, and well done. I know it's a journey. So I really appreciate you sharing your story. So thank you. Great. So my next guest is Ian Hatton, who is one of the trustees of the Optimum Health Clinic Foundation. You guys that are watching this may not be aware actually how much work goes on behind the scenes, especially since nearly 2 years ago now we made the transition. The trustees, I personally want to say the trustees have played an amazing role in firstly making my life a lot easier and a lot harder. Easier in terms of having the support towards our vision, harder in terms of a lot more committees and meetings and such things, but bringing a huge amount of additional value in terms of what we do. So we thought it'd be helpful for you guys that maybe don't know so much of what goes on behind the scenes, for us to talk a little bit about some of the things that we do, some of the little projects we've got going on. Maybe a good starting point, Ian, would be, I can't remember when it was, it must have been at least 4 years ago, that you sent an email saying, I'm going to do this bike ride and I'd like to fundraise some money for the Optimum Health Clinic Foundation, and you cycled.
3 and a bit years.
Yeah, so you cycled across England.
Yeah, I did, didn't I? Yeah.
That was the easiest thing you've done for the charity, wasn't it?
And this is how I'm rewarded. Yeah, thank you. That was kind of the way I got introduced to you and the clinic was through Kate, through our daughter.
Your daughter, yeah.
Who was diagnosed with ME quite a long time ago now, and she was referred to the Optimum Health Clinic by an osteopath who was treating her at the time. And until then, like a lot of your other patients, had been sort of not really getting anywhere, lots of false dawns and not really finding out what the real problem was. And she, we managed to get her down here to London to go to the 90-day program, which was a bit of an effort in itself, as you can imagine.
Sure.
She had particularly severe form of the disease. And she was completely inspired by it, and made significant progress in a relatively short period of time, having done the 90-day program and the follow-up events that happened. And so I started to look at what you did, and found out that one of the principles that you had was that ME was not really a traditional disease in that sense. It was more a series of body systems that were out of balance. And I thought, well, actually, that's not too far away from traditional pharmaceutical medicine, which is my background. There's lots of things that are treated by more than one aspect and more than one kind of intervention. So then, some mad friends of mine decided we'd cycle across England in 2 days. So as you do, There was nothing on television, so
fair enough
to do that. And so we did. So I thought, well, I'll do it, and I'll raise some money for this very worthwhile. It wasn't a charity then, but this worthwhile.
But there was a charitable element, but it didn't own the organisation. Yeah,
exactly.
And then was your fatal mistake. You emailed me, and I said, well, let me take you out to lunch, say thank you for your efforts, and then promptly had you signed up as a trustee.
I know, that was good.
So and then I think it was a year or two after that we made the big transition that we made to the Optimum Health Clinic Foundation, owning the Optimum Health Clinic. That's a whole other story. But maybe we should just say a little bit about the long-term vision. We made this whole change and we've got this whole kind of direction. I don't know how you'd summarise what we're really trying to do with all the research and all the things that are going on.
Yeah, I guess the overriding principle is increasing awareness and availability. There's a lot of evidence now that's been produced by other innovative people like Dr. Myhill that ME is a physical disease. Right. And there's also a significant unmet need. When you work in pharmaceutical research, the whole industry is geared towards meeting unmet clinical need. That's kind of the holy grail, if you like, because if there's no unmet need, why bother doing it? Because there's things there already.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
And there was some evidence, and I suppose there still is, that mild and moderate forms of chronic fatigue and ME can get some support and some relief from traditional, graded exercise and CBT therapies. But there is very little evidence to suggest that those with the severe form of the disease get relief from that kind of intervention. So there's certainly an unmet need. And one of the main reasons that we're trying to do this with research is to provide an increased number of patients with access to the treatments that we offer. And the integrative medical part of the picture is something which I think is incredibly important.
I think one of the things that I'd like to say about it is that I would say when we first started the Optimum Health Clinic, really it was about, I'd recovered, would this work for other people? Could we develop some effective interventions that would help people? And then we went for a period of, okay, we can, I can help some people. Nikki Gratrick, our first director of nutrition, can help some people. Can we now scale this to other practitioners being somewhat effective in what we're doing? And we did that. And then it became, great, we've got effective treatments, but the vast majority of people that want to access them can't afford them. Yeah. And so it then really became, as an organisation, of course we're always innovating, and I'm always the first to say we don't have all the answers. We're always developing our understanding of what we're doing. But we definitely have some answers that are very effective for a good number of people. So then the question becomes, how do we help people access the treatments? And that's really where the key's the research. That's what makes it possible.
It is. It has to be evidence-based, and the main provider of healthcare in this country is the NHS, and they will not entertain any forms of treatment that are not evidence-based. So the whole direction of our research program is geared towards doing that, is providing an evidence base, following on from that study that you did with Megan Arrell that was published in the BMJ, which was a very significant step. That's the first time that we've had something published in a mainstream medical journal.
And the first time in our community it was done as well.
Yeah. So that was a really significant step to have that accepted, and so the plan for the research is to do that over a period of years and not do just one study. That's the point. We have to do more than one study, because again, in comparison to the traditional medical approach, you don't get approval by NICE or anybody else because of one study. You have to do a whole range of approaches and a range of patient groups and a range of treatments.
Yeah, and I think this is one of the things that I think is a really important point, that I think it's and I understand it because I was on the different perspective many years ago, but I think people often don't realise how expensive research is, how complicated it is, how long it takes. You know, and I think I really get that for the patient. It's like, well, I want it now. I don't want to wait 5 years for, you know, more research to be done and da-da-da-da. And of course, the reality is whether we like it or not, and actually we don't like it, but we are where we are. And so maybe we just say a little bit about some of the current things we're doing. So we set up recently a research and medicine committee. I don't know if you want to just say a couple of words about that.
Yeah, sure. Towards the end of last year, about a year ago now, we did an internal consultation process, which I was sort of looking at, which gave me the chance to talk to pretty much all of the practitioners and the admin team and various other people in the group about the direction of the then newly formed charity, and this idea that you and I and a couple of others had about making integrative medicine part of the offering that the foundation had. And they all were very supportive of it and thought it was the way that we should be going, and also expressed a very strong desire to become involved in that process. They believed in the end goal, but had a few concerns about how we're going to get there. So what we decided to do was to set up a research and medicine committee which provides a forum for practitioners from nutrition and psychology, and you and me, to look at the plans that we have for research and to discuss them, and for the practitioners to provide their expert advice as to whether they think that was a good idea or a bad idea, and the best way to enact those proposals. Yes. Yeah. And then a consensus view goes to the Board of Trustees to implement the strategy. And I think it's working quite well. Yeah. We've had a meeting, and we've got another one. Yeah, 2 days' time.
That's right. Yeah, I think it's great, and I think it's there's a lot of good insight that comes out of that, in a sense, in terms of helping solve the problems.
And there's some really good expertise in that group as well. People who've worked for long periods in the NHS, who are really good at research, doing postgraduate qualifications in nutrition. It's a very strong grounding. Yeah,
it is. And we should say we've been a bit slow on the publication side over the last kind of 18 months or so, mainly because, and we'll talk about in a moment, the plan for the full randomised controlled trial that we're doing. But we did recently have a publication, I can't remember where it was, but I can tell you where the paper is, which is on actually secretsrecovery.com, which was done by the Chronic Illness Research Team at University of East London, actually looking at secrets to recovery, which improved on some of the limitations that we had on the BMJ study, in the sense that we had an active control group, and it was another step on the path, let's say, towards what we're trying to do. It had a few limitations in that it was limited to only 8 weeks because of the research was doing an MSc, and there was, but again, we found some good positive things.
I think that was important as well, because I think as was said in the text of the paper, the study that you and Megan did, the patients all had other interventions during the period of that study. They either had nutrition or psychology or both. And this one, there was none of that. There was just the secrets recovery, or the meditation was the control group, which is a cleaner kind of approach. And there's some interesting conclusions came out of it, I think.
Absolutely, especially given it was only at 8 weeks. So let's just talk briefly about the kind of holy grail, the randomised controlled trial, which is something that for me is like something I wanted to do for kind of certainly at least 8 years at this point. And you say a bit about it. I mean, we're fairly down the path in terms of hopefully negotiating an agreement with the university, and maybe let's say why is this so important, this study? Maybe that's my question.
It's important in as much that it's an expansion of the work that you did with Megan, which was published in the BMJ study, and that, as you quite rightly said at the conclusion of the study, was a preliminary look. And again, it was over a very short period of time, longer than the secret study, but it was still over 3 months.
3 months it was,
which in terms of a patient's experience of ME, chronic fatigue, and the recovery from it,
it's like a snapshot.
It's a snapshot, yes, exactly. Yeah. It's a blink of an eye. Yeah. So the purpose of doing the randomised control study is firstly to randomise patients to particular groups, which hasn't been done before using the OHC approach, and to do it and follow them up over a much longer period of time, at least 1 year, with various interventions either in psychology or nutrition or both. Similar approach that you did through the BMJ study, for at least 12 months.
We'll aim to have more follow-ups published down the line as well, so we can show the kind of longer term effect.
Yeah. So that if we get the same responses as you got within the 12-week period from your BMJ study, would hopefully show a significant improvement in some symptoms of ME and chronic fatigue over a much longer period of time.
And we would hope more improvement because we've got more time to have more effect.
Yeah. The people that I think it's quite important that we establish quite strong, long-standing links with a reputable university, because, as I said earlier on, this isn't going to be just one study. In order for us to become a leader in integrative medicine, we're going to need more than one study. And we've been talking, as you know, with a few people, one particular university, who have expertise in psychology, a very good interest in chronic fatigue and ME, and also an expertise in postgraduate functional nutritional medicine. And although we can't announce the more details at the moment, as you know, we're fairly confident that we're going to be able to announce some kind of long-term collaboration with a university before the end of this year, and then start the recruitment in the first quarter of next year.
Yes. And also, we should say that's really where we'll be talking to a lot more to our patient group and supporters about the fundraising side of it, because research costs money, and or any profits that are generated by the Optimum Health Clinic all go towards our research. But the Optimum Health Clinic is not designed as profit as the primary focus, although of course it has to be commercially viable. The focus is supporting patients and doing what we do to the best of our ability. And we do the research, and the long term is that we hope there will be government funding for treatment one day. That's really that's how it should be. That's how it is for other illnesses that there are effective treatments for, and that's how it should be for ME and chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there are parallels with traditional medicine, I suppose, if you think about the way that people treat back pain. 20 years ago, everybody just got prescription medicine, steroids, and high doses of anti-inflammatory drugs and all sorts of problems. It didn't really work, and now it's a much more integrative approach. You can get osteopaths and chiropractors and
get acupuncture now,
and it's all used together to treat back pain. But it takes quite a long time to get that kind of approach accepted. But I think that's the right way to go, and we've got the tools to do it, and we've got the organisation to do it. In these areas, I think there's lots and lots of opportunities.
Yes.
To treat a condition, to have a different lifestyle, to do whatever you want to do. The difficult thing is picking the right ones.
Yeah, and we can't do it on our own, and that's certainly where I imagine hopefully we'll announce the collaboration end of this year, and sometime early next year we'll announce the fundraising campaign, and that's where ultimately we need our patients and people they know to support making this happen. And I think it really is the time. It will be the time for people that are frustrated that things don't happen to help make something potentially life-changing for a lot of people happen.
So how far have I got to cycle next time?
Well, if we work out how much you raised there, probably around the world a couple of times.
Right, okay.
That's all right, isn't it? Great. Anything else that you want to say, Ian?
No, I just think it's such an exciting time. This is a really big transition for the organisation that you set up a few years ago. It's moved from being a private business to a charity as a foundation, and we've restructured the business. It's now in a much better place than it was, and is more able to fit into this kind of growth into medicine, but retaining the psychology and nutrition approach, which is the foundation of your business. It's not, that's not going to disappear. It's not going to go into just being a straightforward medical approach. We're incorporating that extra dimension into the offering, and there's an awful lot of evidence now being generated to suggest that integrative medicine is the right approach for a number of diseases, particularly for chronic fatigue and ME. And I think we're on the right track and we're going to get there.
Yeah, great. Well, firstly, I'm incredibly grateful for your support and the other trustees as well. I mean, you know, when I set the organisation up, as you know, I had this passion. I wanted to help people. And it was a big thing, you know, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, to transition to being it's a thing that I owned, like my kind of first baby, and to give it away to kind of charity. But, you know, it's really exciting for me to see it be flourishing the way that it is, and to have the support of you guys and help make that happen. So I really appreciate that. Thank you, Ian. And thank you also for your time this evening as well. So for you guys watching, if you want any more information on the Optimum Health Clinic, you can go to www.freedomfromme.co.uk, and there you can order a free information pack which gives you a lot more information on what the clinic does, how we work, and what we offer. You can also request a free 15-minute chat where you can talk with someone from the psychology team, nutrition team, and really get your questions answered about your situation. Do also check out secretstorecovery.com, which is where this video is probably playing. We've got over 100 hours of free resources, 100 hours of resources that you can sign up for a very affordable fee, also including a free MP3 player. So I meant to say it was free, and that is a great way of really supporting your own recovery. So we will let you know when the next Secrets to Recovery Live is. It will be sometime in November. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Ian and to Natasha for their support this evening, and we will talk with you very soon. Bye-bye.